Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. Space, the final frontier. These are the stories of, I'm kidding. But the Star Trek enthusiast inside of me just checked off an item on my bucket list. In all seriousness, though, we have some big news. A total solar eclipse will take place on Monday, April 8th. Now, Nashville will not be in the path of the eclipse's totality, but we will be able to see and experience the eclipse here. So what is the eclipse? When exactly do they happen? And how can we experience the eclipse safely? No staring at the sun, everyone. Here to give us the lowdown on everything we need to know is Dr. Morgan Renberg. He is from the Adventure Science Center. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to This is Nashville.
It's great to be here. I can't wait to talk all things eclipse.
All things eclipse. This is the best. All right, let's get into it. What are the details about this eclipse and what makes this one special?
Yeah, so this is what we call a total solar eclipse, which means that the moon will completely block out the light from the sun's surface, what we call the photosphere. And that's a really unusual thing. It only happens about once every 18 months somewhere on Earth. Mm-hmm. But you think about it, most of Earth is the ocean. And most of the land is places that people don't really live, like Antarctica or Siberia or the North Pole. And so the opportunity for a total eclipse to be visible from places where people actually live is pretty unusual. As you mentioned, unfortunately, it won't be happening right here in Nashville, but we don't have to go too far to see a total eclipse. And even if you can't make it out there, there's still going to be a lot to see from right here in the city.
What would it look like to people here in Nashville when the eclipse happens on the 8th?
Yeah, so here's the crazy thing. About 95% of the sun will be blocked here in Nashville, but if you were to walk outside, you wouldn't even know it. The sun puts out so much light that our eyes don't even really notice the difference between 95% and 100%.
Wow.
It's not until you block out like 99.999% that we really notice. And that's why it's really important, even on the day of the eclipse, not to look directly at the sun without those solar viewing glasses. Mm-hmm. But if you put those glasses on, what you would see is that over the course of a couple of hours, that disk of the sun would get smaller and smaller and smaller. It'd start to kind of look like a Pac-Man with a chunk being taken out of it. And until 95% of it was covered by the moon. And then over the next hour or so, it would go the other direction and get bigger and bigger and bigger again.
Now, I'm about to ask a question that is answered in first or second grade, but tell us, what is an eclipse and what causes them?
Yes, so the eclipse happens from the unique arrangement of the sun, the earth, and the moon. So we all learned in first or second grade that the earth orbits around the sun and that the moon orbits around the earth. And when those things line up, they can block out each other. Now, you might wonder, well, why doesn't this happen every month, right? It takes the moon about 1 month to go around the earth. And the answer is that things don't line up quite as perfectly in reality as they do sort of on our sheet of paper. The moon's path around the earth is tilted just a little bit, and the earth's path around the sun is tilted a little bit too. So that means that some months when the moon is between the sun and the earth, it's a little bit above our view of the sun. And in other months, it's a little bit below our moon or our view of the sun. And then sometimes it blocks out some of the sun and not all of it. And that's what we call a partial eclipse.
Okay.
And you might remember back in October, we had one of those eclipses. And those are a lot more common because it doesn't take a perfect alignment.
All right.
Now, even with all of those things, it's very, very lucky that we get to see total eclipses at all, because there's one more piece, which is the fact that in the sky, the sun and the moon are almost exactly the same size. And that's because while the sun's about 400 times bigger than the moon, it's also about 400 times farther away. And that's what allows, when the moon to pass in front, to it totally to block out all but the very outer rim. And if we came back millions of years in the future, we wouldn't be able to see that, because the moon's distance is changing a little bit from the Earth, and that won't happen anymore.
Is the moon getting further away from the Earth?
Slowly, it's getting farther away.
Wow.
And so we're in this just amazing period where the sun and the moon feel or appear exactly the same size on the sky, which allows a total eclipse to happen. And if that hadn't happened, we would be far less knowledgeable about the universe, because ancient thinkers were able to use that to deduce the relative size of these objects long before we could send spaceships out to actually measure them directly. So it's totally changed the way in which we understand the universe.
Wow. Now, Earth is not the only planet in our system with moons. Do eclipses happen on other planets?
They do, but not in the same way, because they don't have this same alignment. So, in fact, if you were on Mars, for example, we got some rovers on Mars, and you look up with one of those rovers at the sun, you can see the moon pass in front of the sun. The moons of Mars pass in front of the sun, but they're tiny. And so they look like just little specks traveling in front. So you don't see this beautiful corona that we see in the total eclipse. And you certainly wouldn't notice that the light got any dimmer. It just happens that Earth's moon is really big and relatively close to us, which allows this amazing alignment to happen every 18 months or so.
Another thing that makes us a very special planet.
Oh, we're so lucky.
Okay, so how can folks experience the eclipse here in Nashville? What is the Adventure Science Center doing?
Yeah, we've got a whole day of activities planned. So the eclipse will begin here in Nashville at about 12:45 on Monday the 8th. And then it will peak, where we get that 95% coverage, at about 2 o'clock. And so all day, though, from when we open at 9 all the way through when we close at 3, we're going to have activities. And our theme for the day is to experience the power of the sun. And so outside of the Science Center, you'll be able to, of course, look up and see the eclipse with your eclipse glasses. We'll have some telescopes set up with eclipse covers so that you can look through a big telescope and see in much more detail what it looks like. You might even see some sunspots on the moon. And then we're going to have all these great activities. You're going to be able to experience the energy from the sun by creating these keychains that change color in the light of the sun. You're going to be able to create art using materials that react to sunlight and change color as well.
That's so cool.
And then you're going to be able to see this really amazing solar vehicle that can travel coast to coast across the country, powered nothing but the sun.
Wow.
And then inside, we're going to help you create your own solar viewer so that you could see the sun without the use of the eclipse glasses. And of course, you'll be able to check out our amazing planetarium, where we'll be running a planetarium show all about the history of solar eclipses, the science of them, how to observe them, and more. You're definitely going to want to check that out as well.
Is the event free?
The event is free on the outside. It's paid on the inside. And with every ticket you buy, you'll get a pair of eclipse glasses so that everybody in your family can observe the eclipse safely together.
Okay, observing the eclipse safely. I know there's going to be plenty of people at home. Someone's going to say, hey, I'm just going to throw on 4 or 5 pairs of Ray-Bans, a bunch of sunglasses, and then I'm going to view the eclipse. That's not a wise idea.
No, you do not want to do that. Doesn't matter if you got 1 great pair of sunglasses or 10 great pairs. The sun is so bright that you'll be damaging your eyes maybe without even noticing it. So you're going to want to get these eclipse glasses. And now, thankfully, they're really cheap. You can buy them for $3 out of our gift shop. You can order them online. And they allow you to block out enough of the sun's energy in order to see the eclipse. Now, if you don't have those glasses and it's like, uh-oh, it's April 8th and I don't have my glasses, you still have some options. The first option is if you have like a colander or something at home, you can take that out and hold it up. And it'll act like a bunch of tiny little lenses that cast images of the eclipse onto the ground. And you can turn around and just see all these images of the eclipse. And if you don't have a colander, you can maybe find a tree, and the light filtering through the branches of a tree does the same thing. And it'll cast all of these perfect little pictures all the way on the ground. You can see them with all the help from nature.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So it's a safe way for people to enjoy it at home.
Yes, there's all sorts of ways to see it. You absolutely want to catch this event. But of course, if you can get out to see it in totality, that'll be a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you're not going to want to miss.
I know a few people who are planning road trips to do that. Where, if someone does want to drive, where can they go to fully experience the totality of this eclipse?
Yes, we're pretty lucky here. Although we don't have the eclipse here, we've got a lot of places to go. You can drive west into Arkansas. You can drive north and catch it in parts of Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. It runs almost straight over Indianapolis. You can see it in Evansville, in Carbondale. lots of places you can go that are day trips from Nashville. So if you pile the family in the car, drive out for a few hours, see the eclipse, you can make it back and home to have an amazing dinner to think about what you just saw.
How excited are you?
Oh, I am thrilled. I'm going to be out in Evansville along with some other folks from the museum. We've organized a bus trip out there. And here's the dirty little secret. I've never seen a total eclipse in person. And so I am on the edge of my seat to see this after all these years of talking about it. I can't wait to experience it for myself.
That's pretty cool. You know, this is a really wild astronomical event, but it's predictable, right?
Yes, we've predicted them for hundreds of years into the future, and there's been records of them going back thousands of years into the past.
Well, how have people in the past, how have they thought about eclipses when they happen?
Oh, they've had all sorts of reactions from, that was kind of strange, to this was a sign from the gods that, our ways are wrong. And there's a famous event that was recounted in an ancient text by Herodotus from the 6th century BCE. And it described this battle between two ancient nations. And they'd been fighting for 6 years over and over and over again. And they had this battle where suddenly day became night. And we think a solar eclipse must have occurred on the day of the battle. And when that happened, they immediately stopped fighting and they brokered a peace treaty between those two nations on the spot because clearly this was a sign that they were not doing the right thing.
Wow.
And so we've had all of these reactions over the years, but we've written it down. And that's been so important because eclipses are actually one of the most important tools we have for figuring out how ancient calendars work. Because we can calculate, going back thousands of years, the exact date that these events happened. And then when somebody wrote down the date that it happened in their calendar and that the sky went dark, now we know, they saw the eclipse. And we can go back through thousands of years and reconcile all of these calendars based on the presence of these solar eclipses.
So that's giving us literally a little map to history. Huh?
It's everywhere you look.
Now tell me about yourself. How'd you get into this line of work?
Oh, I started my career in astronomy. I was working on NASA's Cassini mission to Saturn. So I was studying the rings of Saturn as one very, very small part of this amazing team. And I did that for a few years. And along the way, I started doing things like this, talking about the work that we were doing and just the wider wonder of the universe. And over time, started to realize that I was having more fun doing this than I was doing my day-to-day work. And then in 2017, we crashed Cassini into Saturn. Now, we did that on purpose, but it was a pretty clear sign that I was going to have to find something else to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, given that, maybe now's the chance to take this leap and share all the amazing things about the universe with other people as the full-time job. So I started getting into museums. A couple of years ago, I ended up here at the Adventure Science Center, and I just love what I do every day.
What do you like so much about working at the Adventure Science Center?
Oh, it's just amazing. I think back to when I was going to museums growing up and thinking about, I had all these questions about simple things, about complicated things, and the museum science centers represented a place where people were trying to find the answers. And I think all of us have questions that we wish we had the tools to answer. And I also think about how much I'm amazed by what's up there in the universe, and I want to know personally, sort of selfishly, I want to know as much as I can. But the only way to find those things out is to have the most possible people working to find those answers. So I want to get people excited. I want them to go be astronomers or physicists or chemists or geologists, go learn those answers, and then come back and tell me so that I can share in the wonder at our universe that I hope everybody else can enjoy as well.
So you're fielding questions from folks who come to the Science Center, children, elementary school students, adults even. What's the most common question you get?
What's the most common question? I think a real common question is, are aliens real? Is there life out there in the universe? And that's one of the hardest ones to answer because, and I know a lot of astronomers and we've talked about this ourselves. And I would say I've almost never met an astronomer who isn't convinced that there's life out there.
Okay.
Once you understand just the vastness of the universe, that, there's hundreds of billions of stars in our Milky Way galaxy, and each of those stars might have 8 planets like our solar system does. You start just putting the numbers together. The numbers become so big that it just seems like it would be an extraordinary coincidence for life to have only ever arisen here.
Yeah.
But that being said, will we ever know that there's life out there in the universe? I think that's the harder question because, again, space is enormous. And just the time to get to the nearest stars far exceeds a human lifetime. And so I think we might be in this situation where we can be pretty confident that there's life all over the place, but we're just going to be grasping at confirmation that it's actually out there.
So it's quite possible that somewhere out there in the universe there is a intelligent species, a species of intelligent life, kind of like us, maybe doing their own noon talk show on radio.
Oh, I hope so. Wouldn't that be so cool? Maybe they're talking about you and I right now.
That'd be really cool. Okay, now, we only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to talk about something. You know, a month ago it was reported that Super Earth TOI 715 could be habitable, meaning that it's in the suitable conditions of life as we know it. Now, this is an exoplanet. It orbits around a red dwarf sun. It's 3 times the mass of Earth. They think it sits in this habitable zone or the Goldilocks zone. Explain to us what that Goldilocks zone is and why it's important.
Yeah, so the habitable zone is a recognition that one of the things all life on Earth seems to need is liquid water. Okay. And it's not the only thing life needs, but it's a pretty clear thing that, I just took a sip of water while we were talking here. Bacteria need water. Dinosaurs needed water. We all needed water. And so the habitable zone is the area around a star that is not so cold that water on the surface would be frozen like ice, and it's not so hot that that water would boil off into steam. Mm-hmm. And we can kind of think about that here in our own solar system. Venus is at the inner edge of the habitable zone, and it is way too hot. It is so dry. And then Mars is at the outer edge of the habitable zone, and it is too cold. So we would have to be between Venus and Mars in order to have water and therefore life. Uh-huh. And here's Earth. Okay. So we're looking out in the solar system or out in the galaxy and looking for other stars and looking for planets. And we're trying to figure out, okay, of those planets, which ones are rocky, like the Earth, mm-hmm. and fall within that zone. And then we're going to take NASA's Webb telescope and study those one by one in more detail to see what we see in the atmosphere that reflects the possibility of life. Hopefully we'll find something that sticks out and says, yes, I am life here waiting to be discovered.
That's really cool. Now, real quick, I have less than a minute left. Can you tell us what's new at the Adventure Science Center? Yes,
if you're a space lover loving this show, come by after June 1st to check out our renovated Wonders of the Universe exhibit. We're going to have a NASA Curiosity rover on display. You'll learn about the James Webb Telescope and all the stuff we've been talking about.
That's so cool. I want to thank you so much for coming on here and exciting my imagination, I'm sure our listeners as well, about the wonders of the universe. Dr. Morgan Renberg is an astronomer and Vice President of Exhibits and Experiences at the Adventure Science Center. Again, Dr. Renberg, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to keep up our conversation about space and the stars when we talk with one of the science community's biggest stars, Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. He's one of the world's foremost astrophysicists, authors, and science communicators. He's also the science teacher we all wish we had. I'd like to welcome Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson to This is Nashville. Dr. Tyson, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you. And thanks for that very nice compliment that you think everyone would want me. Here's the problem. If that turned everybody into scientists, that's not an interesting world. We need artists and musicians and broadcasters. So no, I don't. I can't be everybody. If the consequence is everybody becomes a scientist, no.
I'd love to take a scientific approach to art. Say it's inspired by you.
There you go. So thank you. So you bring the science to whatever else you're doing.
Exactly.
totally works.
That's how we get it going. All right. So, something we've been asking folks is, what's on your mind today? What did you wake up with on your mind for today?
Well, most times I think about the universe. This particular morning, let me think. I had to get to a breakfast meeting at 7:30 a.m. to talk about the future with someone who's involved with the future of the skeptics movement. And are their tactics and methods and tools aligned properly with what would be successful? Because as my father once told me, he was active in the civil rights movement, a man who just tried to get stuff done socially, culturally. He said, it's not good enough to be right. You also have to be effective. And if you're not effective, go home. You're just spewing out. You're just showing off that you have some knowledge base, but if you're not convincing anyone, you're not useful. So in the skeptics movement, they're trying to show that things like homeopathy, where you dilute a medicine so that there's no medicine left in it, it does not become more potent. Yet there's an entire subset of human beings walking among us who think that, right? So anyway, I was just prepping for that breakfast today. And I ordered fried eggs over hard with bacon and a buttered English muffin, and then I put it together to make an egg McMuffin.
That's not bad.
A very expensive, because it was in a hotel restaurant, very expensive egg McMuffin compared with McDonald's.
I bet it tastes a lot better too. See, that's that scientific creativity we were just talking about.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Given that your father said, not only be right, but be effective, here's something I've been wanting to ask you. Can you make the perfect society? Like make the closest thing we have to a perfect society, taking the best parts of societies and cultures from across the globe?
No, what you do is, no, that implies that that's a final state. But people's awareness and understandings evolve. I don't mean evolve biologically. I mean, people become more and more enlightened over the years. There is no country in the world today that, while the world might still have slavery, that slavery is definitely under the wraps, right? And they know they're not supposed to do it, but if they do, but it's not like you have major forces operating in the world trading human beings and selling human beings. Yet that we went centuries doing that. So moral progress, I think, can be real. And just because one culture does it doesn't mean another culture should. What I will tell you is that in the United States, where at least we tell ourselves that it's the land of the free and the pursuit of happiness, what I think about it is think of social media, which has become kind of like a cesspool. You know why? Because if you post an opinion, people attack it for not matching their opinion.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? I don't remember that happening. You go back pre-social media, you'd express an opinion and someone would say, oh, that's interesting. I have a different opinion. Let's compare and contrast over a beer, or whatever, right? And so that doesn't happen today. There's a polarization, a tribalization of people's views that is not conducive to an enlightened society or to a free democracy. So I would claim that if people were more open to just listening to other people, and if everyone had a foundation of rational, this is the big stress. If everyone had sort of a rational foundation for how their brains are wired for thinking, then we'd have some hope that after the conversation, you'd get the bits of one person's idea, other bits of the other person's, and you come up with a new idea. And then this progresses. And so all cultures have had to solve unique problems that they've encountered by geography, by technology, by biology, whatever. And you bring it all together, just like you were suggesting. But people have to be open to this. And if you're not, we remain tribalized.
I understand what you're saying about social media. I, for one, recently, about 3 weeks ago, got rid of Instagram from my phone. And I got to tell you, Dr. Tyson, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders.
A tremendous weight. All right, so think about the United States. What can the universe tell us about who will win the 2024 presidential election?
Well, the universe is not a crystal ball, right? But I can tell you this, that a cosmic perspective, that's a point of view that's sort of above the Earth, as it sounds, right? That's what that is. In fact, it's even above you might have heard about the overview effect that astronauts speak of when they go into orbit. By the way, if the Earth were a schoolroom globe, do you know how high above Earth all these astronauts are who've spoken of the overview effect? Do you have any idea?
If they're a schoolroom globe, maybe about.
If Earth is a schoolroom globe, you ask yourself, how high above Earth are they? I'll tell you, they're about a centimeter above Earth.
That's what I was going to think. Yeah, about an inch. I was going to guess.
About a centimeter. So yeah, that's a more cosmic view than being on Earth. But a really cosmic view is you go to the moon, and then there's the entire Earth floating there in the vacuum darkness of space. And then you say, oh my gosh, and quoting Carl Sagan here, everyone you've ever known or heard of or read about lived out their lives on that ball. And then you get closer and you find out, oh, we carved up the land into regions where you now need to show authority to cross the borders. Wait, aren't you all the same species? Yeah, but we're different. Oh, no. And they worship a different God than we do, and their skin color reflects light differently than ours do, and they sleep with different people than we do. So therefore, we will get angry with them, and we might even kill them, right? So if an alien came to Earth after seeing this beautiful ball, and they get closer and closer and closer and find out that the dominant species is behaving this way, they run back to their home planet and say, there is no sign of intelligent life on Earth.
Yeah, maybe except for the dolphins who just gave us the thanks for the fish before they took off.
Yeah, and dolphins and elephants too, and whales. They all have bigger brains than we do. Yes.
Speaking about the moon, on the 22nd of February, there was big news that a private company was able to land on the lunar surface, putting the United States back on the moon for the first time in 50 years. But this time it landed in the lunar South Pole. For listeners who may not be aware, the moon is tidally locked, correct? So one side faces the sun constantly and another side faces the vastness of space.
No, one side only faces Earth.
One side only faces Earth.
But all sides of the moon receive sunlight.
Okay.
A day on the moon lasts a month. A month was what the month used to be called.
Oh, wow.
But so, yeah, the moon, all sides. So there's no dark side of the moon, contrary to Pink Floyd's 1973 album title that I've had to spend decades undoing the damage that album title called, The Dark Side of the Moon. So I mean, this should have happened decades ago. So everyone is celebrating it, but come on, you realize 50 years before 1972, which was the last mission on the moon, 50 years before that was 1924, right? So come on, people. Yeah, I'm glad we're excited, but don't get so excited because we've already been to the moon. In fact, we've had people on the moon.
Yeah,
and we've driven electric carts on the moon. Now here we have a private company that lands something there, and everybody's getting all excited. Yes, it opens it back up, but I don't count it as opening a frontier. I count it as reclaiming a frontier that we had long lost and forgotten.
What can we do to open up new frontiers? Like, where would you like to see us go next?
Oh, by the way, well, no, it's not up to me. It's up in a democracy. It's up to what people want to do, provided that they are fully informed. And by the way, it shouldn't be just where do you want to go next? Let's go everywhere, because not everyone wants to go to the same place. So why not go back to the moon and set up a colony there? Why not go to Mars? Why not mine an asteroid? Why not figure out a way to deflect asteroids that might have us in their sights? I mean, let's do it all. Don't just sequence it. What's that about? Then everyone has to agree to the sequence. When they built the interstate highway system in the United States, it wasn't just, well, we're going to connect these two places and that's it. No, connect everywhere and let people figure out where they want to pitch tent or what they want to do in one state versus another. So the whole country is interconnected, and empowering people's creativity to go beyond whatever the original people who laid the road had in mind. So that's how I think of space. But by the way, I didn't finish about the South Pole. The value of the South Pole is at the bottoms of craters, the sun never gets very high in the South Pole. It just stays very low on the horizon. And the crater rim is high enough to shadow the basin of the crater in such a way that some craters never see sunlight at all. It literally where the sun don't shine. And in those places, when comets had hit the moon, comets have a large water content. Any water molecules that land in the basin of that crater stay water forever. It's called a cold trap. And NASA is thinking about in situ resource utilization, ISRU, which means you go to the moon, you don't have to bring water, you can extract it from the soils and drink it there. And you can separate the hydrogen and the oxygen, the H2O, separate them. And if you do that and bring them back together, it's highly exothermic. So it gives off a lot of energy. You can make rocket fuel out of that. So I think all future missions to the moon are going to target the South Pole for this reason.
And use the South Pole as a launching point to Mars and other places in the universe.
Possibly. You don't need the moon as a launch point to go to Mars. You can go straight to Mars from Earth. But if you need to test things and make sure we're okay doing it in the way we're doing it, sure. But no, I don't see the moon as a launch pad for Mars. There's no reason to do that.
But potentially,
no, the reason why is you launch from Earth, you go straight to Mars. If you launch to the moon, you need fuel to slow down and land and fuel to take off again.
Okay.
Why? Just go straight to Mars.
So on a colony in the Mars in the future, one of the good points of a colony on the Mars, on the moon, I mean, would be, you could be a good lounge to stop and have a beer or something.
Yeah. Or you go to a restaurant, and there's an old joke where they say, the restaurant would have very interesting food, right? Because it's lunar food, but it would have no atmosphere.
Yeah. It's probably organic, though. Organic food is helpful. Other science news that was interesting to me is that there was a quasar that was seen, I believe, in 1987, but recently astronomers...
discovered. It was discovered back then.
Discovered back then, right? But and scientists, astronomers were able to really understand that it's a quasar. It's about 12 billion light years away. And I heard one report that said it's 1 trillion times brighter than our sun. Is that right?
Oh, easily. Oh, yeah. Well, because it's not it's a black hole eating stars. And when you eat stars, black holes, when they eat, they tend to be very noisy about it, very, very messy.
Okay.
The stars get flayed and it circles down in this like toilet bowl style accretion disk. And as the material does that, it radiates heavily. And this is a quasar phenomenon. This is the hallmark of quasars. This one is particularly brighter than others we've seen. It's kind of an outlier, actually. It's so much of an outlier that we're a little suspicious of the data, because generally in the universe, things don't just come in ones. We think we would have found ones in between the previous record and this one, So, but anyhow, it's exciting. Yeah, there's always discoveries happening, if not daily, certainly weekly in the universe.
New discoveries that are happening that are having us all kind of question things. I know with the James Webb telescope out there has new views of the universe. And something that I heard...
Yeah, not only of nearby stars that are being born, giving birth to planetary systems, but also the early universe. The James Webb found galaxies way earlier in the universe than any modern understanding of cosmology would have them exist. Like there's a point where we think galaxies were born, and JWST has found galaxies before then. Now, of course, that's its entire point. The telescope was exquisitely tuned to observe the early universe and tell us how galaxies were born. So the fact that it made this discovery is not itself surprising. It's what the nature of the discovery is that has us scratching our heads.
And some of these galaxies are a lot older than to be expected.
That's the same. That's the same statement. To find them earlier where they're not supposed to be, that means they formed earlier, which would make them older. Yeah, so that's all the same story.
So is that causing us to kind of rethink the theory of the Big Bang?
Well, that makes a very good clickbait in news articles, so they all say this, right? No, it's there are certain things we might have to revise, but at the moment, the Big Bang has so much going for it that it is unlikely that this would put that in jeopardy.
Well, I know you're a very, very busy man. Dr. Tyson, thank you so much. It was a great honor, and I can mark this off of my bucket list as a host.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. We have to take a short break. When we come back, we'll meet an editor here at WPLN who will talk with us about what it's like to report on space and space news. Far out. Join the conversation by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. To keep up with our own exploration of space and science today, we're now switching gears to listen to an interview producer Elizabeth Burton did with WPLN editor Miriam Kramer, who was the senior space reporter at Axios before coming to WPLN. Let's take a listen.
Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thanks.
I am not Khalil Ekulona, but I am doing this interview right now. So, I shared with you my thoughts on space earlier this week, which is, it's none of my business. But you made it your business.
I did.
Tell me about that. Tell me about being a space reporter.
Yeah, I made it my actual business for like 10 years before I came to our lovely newsroom.
That's a long time.
It was a while.
How did you get into space? How did you decide this is interesting to me? Because I've kind of always been a little scared of it.
That's fair. I mean, so I have been a space dork for kind of as long as I can remember. I thought I wanted to be an astronomer when I was a kid. And then as I got older, I realized that involved like too much math for me.
I don't like math.
Yeah, I mean, math is hard, and I don't know how much of it was like a socialization thing where it's like girls aren't good at math, and I was like, great, and out. I don't have to be good at this or something.
Love being a girl.
Yeah, it's fun. So I have always loved space. Like an early-ish memory of mine is that my parents took us out to this like empty field in Knoxville when there were still empty fields in Knoxville. And we saw the Hale-Bopp comet, which was like,
what is that?
So cool. It was a comet that was visible from Earth. In the 90s.
Wow.
It was like I can't remember exactly what year, but it was just this really formative moment for me where I was like, wow, that is like a ball of ice going around the sun, thousands of years old, and I can like see it.
Wow.
That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. I really liked when they did the like inflatable planetarium thing at school.
Yeah.
But mostly because it was like warm and cozy, and I was like, I'm just gonna take a little nap. And I liked crawling in there because we had to get on all fours and crawl through this little tunnel to get into the planetarium.
I mean, that's fair. Like I sort of actually think that like space in general to me evokes warm and cozy feelings.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, that is different from how I feel about it.
I know, but it's the thing for me was like, I was a really anxious kid. I'm an anxious adult too, but like,
I wasn't going to comment on that.
I mean, but like therapy helps.
Yes.
But when I was a kid, it was like this sort of extreme element of my personality. And one of the things that would help is if I went outside and like looked up at the stars for a while. And I started to feel kind of smaller, and like my problems were maybe a little bit less intense than I thought. And it would like help me chill out. And so, yeah, I mean, writing about space my job sort of canceled those chill feelings out.
Yeah.
But it was also, great in a lot of ways because I had that perspective.
So something to me that seems like the hardest part about reporting on space is that you can't go there. Like, I like working at a local news station because whatever you're talking about, you can go straight to the source. We're here. We have some familiarity with it. When you're reporting on space, very famously, you can't be like, I'm going to hop up some Mars real quick, get some firsthand accounts of what's going on there. So how do you how do you even report on it, really, is my question.
No, I mean, it's a good question. The thing for me is like, it's sort of the same problem that science reporting has in general, is like science reporting is happening all over the country. Like scientists are everywhere. Whatever story, whether it's about like biology, chemistry, anything like that you are interested in, is naturally not going to be happening where you live. Like it's sort of the problem in general with national reporting. I did a lot of source cultivation just like around the country. I went to a lot of conferences. I went to a lot of sort of press events and talked to a bunch of people in NASA, at space companies, at universities. Like Vanderbilt has a great space, science, everything.
Go Vandy.
Yeah, it's great. So I was a space reporter in Nashville for a fair amount of time, for like 4 years before I came over to WPLN. But like, it really involved a lot of remote work, like just talking to people on the phone, visiting when I could, and sort of slowly cultivating those sources.
That's a different definition of working remotely than what we've gotten used to. That is like the ultimate working remotely.
It's real, yeah. It's also funny because like, okay, so this was my sort of deep, dark secret, though I think a lot of people knew this about me. I have basically zero interest in going to space.
Oh.
Yeah. I was a space reporter who really did not want to go to space.
Oh.
And I also, truthfully, like a lot of it was like I saw a lot of failure. Like I saw like a lot of rockets explode.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's this one accident, I think in 2013, with Virgin Galactic, which is a company that's flying today. And they're flying really successfully. Like they're taking people on these sort of suborbital flights where you experience some weightlessness. You're not in orbit, so it's not like you're totally going around the Earth or something. But it's a whole adventure. And there was an accident that they had during testing that killed a pilot and put the other pilot into critical condition. And I covered it for space.com. And that really shaped a lot of how I see things with space. Like I have 2 young kids. It's just not for me. It's just not for me, frankly.
That is none of your business.
That's none of my business.
Okay, I see.
I always sort of said I would go if it was part of my job. Like if it was like, okay, like you got a ticket, you got to cover it, I would probably do it. But just me personally, it not my thing.
Yeah, I think that's part of my fear with it too, because you hear a lot about unsuccessful space trips. You hear a lot about the successful ones, the moon and everything. But did that happen? That's the question that
Elizabeth,
we need you to get to the bottom of.
You are asking me if the moon landing happened?
I am asking you if the moon landing happened.
It did.
It did.
It absolutely
you heard it
happened.
Here first, everyone.
Oh my gosh.
Well, maybe not first, because it did happen a long time. It allegedly happened a long time ago. How do you feel about those conspiracy theories?
I mean, I have a great video to show you of Buzz Aldrin punching a moon landing denier in the face.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon? Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
Being solicit like this, I just
Keep shooting.
All right, well then I'd go through my measures.
You got to keep shooting, man. Okay, well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy.
Just come with me, Buzz.
You really like adventure, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
I don't condone violence in any form, really. Of course. But I understand Buzz punching a moon landing denier in the face. The man walked on the moon.
Where does that conspiracy theory come from?
I mean, there are a lot of different places it can come from. I think like there's a real thread of just sort of mistrust in the government. I think part of it is like sort of like you said, like you can't go there. Like that's not accessible to most of us. It looks unbelievable.
It does.
Some people don't believe it. But I'll just say like it would be a conspiracy beyond all possibility if it didn't actually happen. I've seen the moon rocks. Like, it's just like
You have seen,
you wouldn't just need.
Allegedly, you have seen the moon rock.
I have seen scientists who never went to the moon analyze rocks that they were like,
okay. So we'll take
these
the
are from
allegedly
the
out.
moon.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
it's like there are layers here. It's also like when you think about flat Earth conspiracy theory, like
yes.
you have to believe so many other conspiracies in order to get to the point where you think that the Earth is flat.
Yes.
And it's like sometimes you can't see something yourself. Like sometimes it's just hard.
It's like the tooth fairy.
Maybe not. Maybe the tooth fairy is the best corollary.
So tell me a little bit about the space scene in Nashville. Who are the weirdos? Who are the cool people?
A lot of people assume that I am like a space fan. That I like love all things space. I love rockets. I wear like clothes that have stars on them, like whatever. But I got into space journalism because I wanted to be a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a fan, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means that like I have, I'm not like, I was never really friends with sources.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't embedded in the communities that they were in aside from being embedded as a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had like a little bit of distance from the people that I was reporting on.
Okay, this is interesting because I definitely assumed that everyone who reports on space is just like kind of like the Taylor Swift reporter at the Tennessee, and I'm like, that's a diehard Taylor Swift fan. I assumed the same was true for space reporters. So no.
I mean, we all have interest, but like space is a huge beat. Like it involves politics.
Like the biggest beat there is, pretty much.
As far as just sort of space, like volume goes, like, but it involves politics. It involves policy. It involves economics, business, engineering, and also science. Like science is part of it, but it's not even really the biggest part anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like by the time I was finishing up, it was very much a beat that was filled with business.
Okay.
And Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And how private companies are changing spaceflight and changing space and changing NASA. And so yeah, like people come into it from all different directions. I did come into it because I love science
mm-hmm.
and I'm interested in reporting on science. Like that was what sort of brought me into it, was that I got a master's in science reporting, and then I graduated from the master's and I was like, oh God, I need a job.
Yeah.
And then space.com hired me. And I learned how to be a beat reporter on space, and that was sort of what just strung me through. But a lot of like what drew me to WPLN too is like we're on a beat reporting system.
Right.
And I feel like I understand very intimately how to be a beat reporter and how hard it can be. Like you get really lost in your beat sometimes. Sometimes you don't totally know what a story is anymore because you're like, I've been reporting on this stuff for how long? Like, it's like I'm old enough to remember when, you know, it used to be a thing that people were talking about asteroid mining, and suddenly they're talking about it again. Like I thought we all agreed 10 years ago we weren't going to do this
we weren't
anymore.
Gonna, no more. I wonder if that's something RuPaul will get into, you know, because he dabbles in fracking.
Oh my God.
So, you know,
I don't know anything. I haven't. That is one show I have not gotten into.
I honestly have not watched it very much.
Yeah.
But I do know that RuPaul has some little fracking situation in like Indiana or something.
Oh my God.
We need a fact checker for where this is, but RuPaul fracking.
That's fascinating.
Hand in hand.
That's amazing. Anyway.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Miriam Kramer, editor at Little WPLN.
And thanks to you for listening today. One more time, the upcoming solar eclipse will be on April 8th. You can experience the eclipse here in Nashville, but you'll have to travel to experience the totality. far out. Thanks to you again for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by yours truly, Elizabeth Burton and Katherine Ceicys. It was directed by Katherine Ceicys as well. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekulona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and live long and prosper.